Happy WNBA Monday. Terrika Foster-Brasby, thank you so much for joining me today on the WNBA on NBC. So I think there's so many headlines, but one of the ones I want to start with are there are no longer any undefeated teams in the WNBA. And the second undefeated team went down over the weekend in Caitlin Clark's return, which was, okay, we get it, you're coming back, you're Caitlin Clark, but my goodness, she came back with spectacular fashion, and it was an amazing comeback for her, really powered the Indiana Fever to that win, and now there are no more undefeated teams, and Caitlin Clark is back, and so I don't know what you were thinking if you, like, while you were watching the game, if that's what you were expecting. I knew that it was probably going to be a more challenging game for the Liberty just because Indiana had already played them a little close in the first game, and they were going to be without Jonquel Jones and also Leonie Fibich. And so, but the Fever, they kind of took control early, and, there were times that New York made it interesting, but it was a good game. But the Fever really stepped up, and they won that game.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I think what needed to happen did happen, and that was that Caitlin Clark needed to set the tone very early, and she did that because when the game first started, they had taken the Liberty, had taken an 11-point lead, and so it was kind of one of those things where no matter how or who is missing, if you allow New York to continue to dictate the pace of the game and dictate the flow of the game, it's going to get out of hand very quickly. And Caitlin Clark took that moment to do something I'd never seen before. Sis went off in 38 seconds for like three-pointers. And they weren't just regular three-pointers. They were like from the logo, off-centered, off-kiltered, with defenders, just straight pull-up fire. And it was certainly what New York needed in that moment to help get them back in this game and put it back within reach. But I think it was also something that she needed because coming off of an injury, missing 5 games, she wanted to feel good and feel comfortable. And I think that helped her to do that.
For sure. That 3-point barrage went crazy. People were just, it was obviously all over social. Everyone's going crazy. It's like, Caitlin, what are you doing? These people have families. Calm down, girl. So it was really exciting to watch. Obviously, me as a Warriors fan, it's very Steph Curry-esque with like just that 3-point barrage. So it was just like, she's just Showtime, right? Like, what else can you say about her? I mean, you can say a lot about her, but like, she's just Showtime.
And it also helped to like fuel. I think when you get a player that can like step out of the box and play like that well, it helps to fuel your teammates because now not only does Caitlin go off for 32 points, but you get Aaliyah who gets a double-double with 10 and 11. You get Kelsey Mitchell who really took over that fourth quarter. She drops 22 points. Yep. Lexi Hall drops 14. So what you're doing is you're galvanizing your troops, and really this is what Indiana needed after, they had a decent kill with Caitlin out, but if you want to stay in the conversation of being a contender and you want to punch, you got to capitalize on the moment. And giving this Liberty team that is still a really good team, their first loss of the season says a lot.
Yeah, 7 3-point makes for Caitlin. It tied her career high for 3-point makes in a game. And right, I think, I saw someone I was debating with because they were like, this is a must win for the Fever, like it's like confidence. They need it for confidence. And I was like, what? And I didn't, agree with that. But like, I do understand, like, yes, like at the end of the day, New York understands they were missing 2 players, and like some of their shots were not falling. It wasn't all Indiana Fever's defense. So we know that they can play better, and they will. But yes, it's still a very big statement to say, like, you took down the reigning champs. 2 games now, you've played them closely. It's kind of ironic because in both games, I think JJ went out with injury in that first game, and Leonie Fibich as well. So it's kind of similar. They're missing like 2 of those same key players again. So I'd love to see these 2 teams like fully, armed playing one another, but it still says something that you took them down and beat them because you're trying to say that you're a contender this year. And I don't want to discount that the Fever were also missing DeWanna Bonner. So they didn't have, their full array of pieces either, but it definitely is a statement game. It's a big win. And I expect now that Caitlin is back, I do expect the Fever to move back up, in the rankings and in the standings. And honestly, they have a chance, like assuming they just win tonight, to be the Commissioner Cup team that appears. So I think everyone was sort of just expecting, a rematch between the Lynx and New York, and they both picked the worst time to drop their first games. Like, both of them may not be in the Commissioner's Cup, but, I believe the Fever just have to beat Connecticut. No disrespect to the Connecticut Sun, but I'm sure the Fever are likely going to be favored in that game. So, and I'm sure they're going to want to get their lick back after losing when Caitlin Clark was out. So it should be a good game tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, that's, to come back, win like this, beat New York, and put yourself in position to be the representative from the East for the Commissioner's Cup, I think is big.
Yeah, no, and I will say this, nothing is a must win in June. Unless you're talking about must win for Commissioner's Cup standings or Commissioner's Cup play, something specific to that, nothing is a must win in June. There are 44 games in the season. Talk to me after the All-Star break. That's when we start to say, okay, teams can't really, risk dropping. You got to see where you are in your standings. You got to see where you fare amongst other teams. But right now, literally today is June 16th. The season quite literally started a month ago on May 16th. So we're literally a month into play, and we're starting to now see teams start to take form and take shape. But there were teams who were right in the same position last year, who didn't have the best start, who were kind of right in the middle. And then towards the end of the season, we saw what they were capable of doing. So I think that it's just fair to say nothing is a must win right now. But I think that, neither New York nor Minnesota thought that they would go through the entire season undefeated.
Right.
Like at some point they knew that they were going to eventually
Correct.
lose a game. So it's not the end of the world for those teams. They have bigger goals in mind. Minnesota isn't focused on being perfect. They're focused on getting back to the finals to contend for a championship.
Right.
New York isn't focused on being perfect. They're focused on retaining their title and putting themselves in the best position to do that. So it's totally okay that they lost. Sometimes, as someone I know says regularly, a dead clock is right twice a day, right? So sometimes it's just going to be what it is. And that's totally fine. But I think that there are things that both Minnesota and New York can do to fine tune what it was that caused them to take their first loss in the first place, right? And that's what we're going to be looking to see, what those adjustments are. And they made those adjustments, at least Minnesota did. Minnesota made that adjustment because after they took their loss to Seattle, they turned around and had to play the Sparks. And the Sparks is a pretty formidable team, despite what their record says. And Nafisa did Nafisa things and continued to elevate this team. It's how you respond. So it's going to be interesting to see how New York responds to this loss in their next matchup.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, let's just sticking with the New York and Minnesota. Has anything changed your mind about these two teams right now being the best two teams in the league, even though they took these losses?
Not whatsoever. Not whatsoever. I think the only thing that might switch for me is if I am doing my power rankings, which I really do have to do at some point this today. I think, well, actually, I've had Minnesota 1. No, I had New York 1 and Minnesota 2 for the sheer fact that they were both undefeated and New York is the reigning champions. And I'm not going to disrespect the reigning champions and put them too. But I think this week I will place Minnesota on top of New York, and that is simply because Minnesota has had the opportunity to play another game, and they rebounded from that, where New York this week has not yet had the opportunity to play another game. So just based on this week alone, that loss is the last opportunity that I had to see them. So I do have to place Minnesota above New York this week. But other than that, I suspect this is going to flip-flop multiple times throughout the course of this season. So doesn't really mean much. It's just this week. They got an opportunity to change it next week.
Yeah, for me too. I haven't issued my power rankings. They're going to either go out later this afternoon or the morning, but I have moved Minnesota to the top. My rationale was the same. It's like, look, both teams are undefeated. There was a time that Minnesota had won one more game, but it's just because they played more games, but both teams were undefeated. So I gave New York the respect as the defending champs. And there are some other metrics that actually said New York was playing a little better. And so I had New York as best, but I do think it is appropriate and fine right now to move the Lynx to the top. And I'm doing that for myself. I just think it's funny that they both started 9-0 and then lost that 10th game. It's like, I just think these two teams are going to mirror each other all season. And I am very upset that we have to wait till much later in the season to see them in the Commissioner's Cup. I mean, to play each other, because we thought we were going to get a Commissioner's Cup, matchup. And based on, the possible scenarios, it does not favor New York making the Commissioner's Cup. Minnesota can likely still make it, but I mean, thank you, Richard Cohen, for laying out the scenarios here for us, Terrika. But we see what has to happen for New York to make it, and we see what has to happen for Minnesota to make it. So if Minnesota beats Las Vegas, and we don't know yet if A'ja Wilson will be playing in that game, but I think I'm going to go with, I would pick Minnesota in that game, especially if it's without A'ja Wilson. But it's on the road for the Aces. It's going to be in Minnesota. So I think Minnesota probably makes it to the Commissioner's Cup, and we might get Minnesota versus Indiana.
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you, Natalie. I really wouldn't care if either Minnesota or New York made the Commissioner's Cup. And here's why. Because the Commissioner's Cup has not truly given us a view of what we can expect in the finals. There isn't a team that has won the Commissioner's Cup that has turned around and in the same season won the WNBA finals. So it's great. It's similar to how I feel about the in-season tournament in the NBA, right? It's great. It's fun. I love the fact that the WNBA has the causes that go along with it, the money that they win, the excitement is great. But as it relates to the WNBA finals, doesn't really mean much of anything, because we haven't seen
it usually shows us, though, the teams that are maybe going to be there, but not the winner.
Not the winner. Last year, New York, not last year, year before, I think it was the year before, New York won the Commissioner's Cup, and then Las Vegas ended up winning the championship. And then, last year, Minnesota won the Commissioner's Cup,
but
and they did make it to the finals, but New York won the championship. And I mean, it was just, it's not a true indicator of who is really going to do what. What it does show me, though, is that at some point in this WNBA life, we do need to go back to Eastern Conference versus Western Conference, because the competition is different. The parity in the game is different. And I love seeing the conferences battle each other out. So, I mean, I know that we're doing, top 8 regardless of conference right now for seeding in the finals, but I do hope that at some point we can go back to East versus West, because the Commissioner's Cup shows us that it really can be fun the way that it's currently structured.
Okay, well, T, I think that's enough here. I'm looking forward to all of the final games tomorrow that conclude the Commissioner's Cup part of the season. Make sure you're tuned into the WNBA on NBC. Subscribe to our new YouTube channel, WNBA on NBC. We appreciate you guys for supporting. T, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, anytime.